Okay. Okay, I wanted to talk a little bit more about this issue of fundamental rights and substantive due process and some of these other concepts that have been in the news as a result of the Roe versus Wade opinion and all of the predictions that it could spread to other areas and so forth. I wanted to just go over some of this because I have previously shown you some work I did on with charts outlining different kinds of rights and original rights and fundamental rights and so on. And also I have a booklet, Our Fundamental Rights, not part of the Do Ask, Do Tell series. But I just wanted to go over something today in order to clarify something. So I'm just going to pull up a chart that I made. I'm going to give you the link online in the description so you can go to it because it's hard to read on the screen. Let's just go through just a little bit of it. A fundamental right either has to be specified in the Constitution or Bill of Rights or one of the amendments, or it can be enumerated as intrinsic to ordered liberty if it is well established in tradition, or in some cases for members of protected classes, or certain other issues like voting, although voting really is specified in the Constitution for women and minorities and so forth now. There is the issue of substantive due process then prevents a government, including the states under incorporation doctrine of the 14th Amendment, from taking away fundamental rights of individuals, except under situations of heightened scrutiny where there is really a critical state interest at rest. Other rights that are just ordinary common law rights but not recognized as fundamental can be abrogated when there is simply a rational basis for the states acting. And this becomes a problem in some areas, for example, public health, or maybe in the way gun control works or something. But let's just go through some things. The First Amendment specifies free speech and freedom of association and to organize and assembly and so forth. And the idea of freedom of reach on the internet, as we understand it now, to be read by anybody anywhere in the world, that wouldn't necessarily be part of the First Amendment as such, because it isn't spelled out that way in the Constitution. Of course, it was written before there was an internet. The Second Amendment enumerates a right to self-defense, but it wasn't completely clear that it applied to individuals until after 2008 with D.C. versus Heller. Before, there was some question as to whether you had to belong to an organized militia. So I don't think it was as completely as well enumerated as some conservatives say it was, but it is now. Now, is personal privacy at home an essential liberty interest? We think of it. And if it was, then under the substantive due process idea, a state, under like the incorporation doctrination, couldn't pass a law to stigmatize a group of people, for example, gay people, if it thinks they're likely to perform some kind of behavior when it has no reasonable chance to prosecute people for specific crimes under due process of law and normal rules of evidence because the behavior is covert. That's an important idea in my books. It was important in the way I talked about gays in the military back in the 90s. This idea can be compromised by public health issues, as we've talked about with respect to various diseases in the past, not just COVID, but various, HIV in the past and some other ones. A weakness in just looking at things this way is the government can conscript males even now for military service and trans people by birth of sex, and in fact if they are male by birth, although it's not done right now. A few states, the abortion laws of a few states would seem to conscript females to carry babies to term, even at risk to themselves, even if their pregnancy wasn't voluntary, if it was by rape. In a few cases, that's a risk, so that's a quirk. Now, to me, the right to life is predicated on the person of presumption of personhood, which normally of an unborn child, but in some cases of other parties, like very severely disabled adults, for example. The Constitution doesn't give the courts the authority to define personhood. Only legislators can do this. So Roe had been wrong in trying to do that, and I think Alito is right about that. You could ask questions like this about certain very intelligent animals like orcas or dolphins, but a government would have to define them as peoples. It could not be done just with the Constitution. If an unborn baby, even very young, even in the first week or two of life, is a person, then aborting it he or she might be homicide or murder, so the state might try to extend its powers regarding its residence beyond its borders, and that could create enormous complications for a lot of other businesses, even internet businesses. I also want to talk about the idea of birthright, which is something we used to learn about in Sunday school and ancient societies. You don't have a right to be born without disability or be born into advantageous circumstances into a wealthy family, or be born when technology is advanced or something at a particular time in history. It just isn't possible because of the way physics works. So, you know, it can be specified wills for individual people, but there isn't a natural thing called birthright. And so, because we don't have control of everything that may happen, whether war or pandemic comes, or an extreme natural disaster may come, or an extreme solar storm, like the Carrington event, the way we behave after an extreme event is something that the state would probably have a heightened scrutiny review to legislate. You know, people might have to be much fitter to survive, or at least I might have to be, I feel that way, or they might have to be willing to cooperate even intimately with people whom they don't particularly like or approve of or didn't choose to be around. So these are unusual circumstances that can be imposed on people when there are unusual hardships. And, you know, the ability to deal with hardship is itself a military issue. A major issue, not military issue, a major issue. You know, this is the chart I had before, but I just wanted to cover all of this today. I'll give the links in my write-up of this video when I post it. Thanks.